Welcome everybody, and thank you for giving me your lunch break. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm just waking up, kind of, and I've got this is the first time that I've spoken to anyone kind of publicly about my new Epic stuff, which I'll be officially launching in October. But, I was originally going to visit you all in Detroit with COACT, and I was so excited. COVID got in the way. And I reconnected with these guys recently and said, everybody that's trialed this program has found it super useful in this crazy upheaval of COVID. And may I address your people? So I thank you for giving me your time and allow me to share the screen, and we'll get cracking. Now here we go. Boop, and play it. All right, now what I've got here is a lot of content, a lot of tools and kind of insights, and it's probably going to kind of come at you with a rush in a way that's intentional, because everything is about change right now and about this completely different mindset we need to not only survive, but to thrive in change, because this change isn't leaving. Even when COVID is a distant memory, we have change now that isn't going backwards. So we're now going to be looking at hybrid systems that combine exponential technologies and human connection in this whole new way of serving people and of connecting with people. And as faculty at Singularity University and working at Stanford, for a while now, I've been talking about this whole fourth revolution that's coming, that was all about digital technologies transforming the way we change human behavior. Who knew that a virus would come and accelerate that change into crazy upheaval? So my intention is to walk you through a couple of different areas of understanding and strategy, but the key message to begin with, because I know how many people confuse creative thinking with artistry. The key message is that creative thinking has nothing to do with your art ability. And we all have a part of our brain that is incredibly good at imagining and incredibly good at developing unexpected connections that are the hallmark of innovative thinking. It's a simple matter of finding the tools that allow you to access that. And my specialty is in developing tools and exercises that allow us to activate this other part of our thinking. So I'm going to practice a few of them on you. And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll not only have experienced the feeling of bearable discomfort that is this entirely different way of possibility thinking, but you'll also have some tools to apply to your daily work and daily life. And Shanae's recording, so you can access it at any time. Plus, I'm happy to share these slides as a PDF, so you can go through and read all the fine print, because it's kind of fast paced, so I can get through it. And we also have a follow-up session. So you might have seen when you signed up that there's a debrief a day later. So there's a debrief on Thursday. And at the time you might have thought, I don't want to hear it for more than an hour. Hell no. However, I just want to put it out there. I'm giving you a worksheet to think about after this session, because in my experience, it's a lot. It's a lot, and you need time to back off and digest what's useful and what's sticky for you. But once you do, there's usually a ton of questions. And so I suggested to COACT and their partners that if I did a debrief, I'm happy to lurk for an hour online. And if you want to address that worksheet and then come back to me with thoughts on strategy or any questions you might have, I'm totally down to brainstorm. So if you haven't signed up now, you might by the end. And if you don't, and you just want to pop on Thursday, that's good too. I will be sitting here on screen for an hour to run through with you anything you might have. Meanwhile, here's my plan. So I want to help you understand why the chaos, not just COVID, but generally, why the amount of fear in society across the world right now. I want to help you understand how the new mindset is different and how you can access it on the daily. Particularly want to talk to you about COVID and what the instant digitization, I'll go into that a little bit later, means for humans and who may have been left behind in the digitization of COVID that was forced pretty much overnight. And then I want to show you my new Epic Resilience strategy, which applies to you. It applies to you, giving you the strength and foundation to not only survive this chaos, but to thrive and find opportunity. And once you have that foundation, helping you share it and develop optimism in others. Because of course, what we're all about right now is trying to lift people out of their fear out of their uncertainty and show them how it is totally possible to operate within change without knowing what the outcome will be. And it's actually super exciting and exhilarating once you understand the potential we have with our human brains, you know, to really ride this wave of change. So that's my message. Let's crack on and I'll talk to you a little more about it. So I want to start with this concept of fourth revolution. So Singularity University is down in Silicon Valley. We teach all over the world, and my specialty as faculty at Singularity is the innovation mindset humans need to deal with exponential change. So 10x means 10 times, it means exponential. And we've always talked about this fourth revolution, which was where humans meet machines and this blend happens. It's always been really focused on 10x technology, so exponential technologies. But all of a sudden, COVID has flipped it into a human side. So I'm just going to explain what that means and why it's a different type of change, why it requires a different type of mindset. So the easiest way to think about exponential technologies is to take your iPhone and to understand that within 50 years, we have a computer that is more than 120 million times faster than the computer that sent man to the moon in 1969. It's way cheaper. It has way more capacity. It's lighter. It's smaller. So this is exponential technology in a nutshell. All the stuff on our phone has gone from physical products and services to digitized, and it's become cheaper and more democratic because more people can own it. So if you think about the fact that over 70% of the world will be operating exclusively off a mobile phone by 2030, you really understand the power of exponential technology, which is making things digital, online, easier to share, cheaper, more distributed. And this radically affects human behavior. So this was always coming. COVID was not right in our scope of insight. So as a futurist, it even took all of us by surprise, right? So COVID suddenly accelerated this requirement for all of our stuff to go online. And it disrupted everything about the way we connect with each other, the way we transact, the way we communicate. I mean, even things as simple but as meaningful as we can't smile at strangers, and how that over months is really affecting the way we deal with people we don't know in public settings, the almost dehumanization of people. And what does this mean then? Because what's happened is now that we've been forced to digitize, it's showing us the underbelly of limited communication and the drawbacks of not being able to have physical connection at certain touch points. So what's happened, what I've seen as COVID has kind of changed the way people are interacting, is that we have a different value set emerging. We have a requirement like we've never had before for trust at every level, with each other, with the organizations we deal with every touch point that we're dealing with every day. We have a requirement that comes with that trust for transparency. We don't want everything to be happening in the shadows. And then we have a requirement for resilience, because in the face of unrelenting change, it is physically and emotionally exhausting. And I'm sure that you're all seeing that in the work you're doing out with the community at the moment. In the work I do, I'm seeing it, and I'm not connected on the daily with as many people as you all are. And that's part of the reason I want to talk to you. Because what happens when people have this fear and have this feeling of helplessness and powerlessness is they retract and they don't want to see anything that's different. And if we have people fearing and feeling powerless, we have division. We have, we have less inclusion, and we have less openness to new ideas, which is really scary. We've got to change that. Right. So what we used to do when we had control and when we kind of knew how to minimize variables in terms of strategizing, in terms of planning, we used to set a goal on the horizon and we'd give ourselves ROIs, KPGs, whatever you gave yourself as metrics to get to that simple goal. But when you have relentless change and when it's exponential, constantly growing, you can't set a goal because there isn't a horizon. And I think COVID has shown us what exponential change and exponential growth means better than anything has before. So on the left, you see the diagram. We've always used at Singularity. Okay, you know, the human brain is linear in the way it thinks, and 30 linear steps is 30 meters or 30, whatever you guys call it, because I can't really do imperial, right? So we used to say, the reason it's so hard to understand exponential growth is because it ends up being 26 times around the earth. And the human brain simply can't think in distances like that. Now we have COVID multiplying exponentially, spreading exponentially. Now everybody understands what exponential growth looks like, because it's a spread that's out of control. It's a spread that's unpredictable to a degree. And so how do we think if the world is changing like that because of digital technologies and because of disruptions like this virus? How do we then plan and strategize when we don't have knowledge and we don't have control? Turns out it's actually pretty simple. And actually, from an ethical point of view, a values point of view, it's kind of a nicer way to plan. Because what happens when you don't know, when you don't have a horizon, you can't set a single goal. What you need to have is an overreaching purpose and intention. So if you think about your legacy, like for instance, mine, I turned 50. I'm like, well, what is my, my overreaching platform where I unify everybody with like-minded beneath me? What is it? For me, it's activating hope via creative thinking and activating optimism, spreading optimism in as many people as possible. So I would set that as my goal. Right? And what this means is that everything I do works towards that. It means I don't have one way of doing something, but I have several. And this speaks back to your revaluing failure. Because when you have several ways of getting somewhere, what you're doing is throwing as much stuff against the wall as you can and watching what few things stick, essentially. Right? So when you're dealing in change, you have to set a vision and a purpose. And people unite behind you and you work towards that. And you try a whole lot of things along the way. And what happens is you don't get immediate return. You don't get a straight up ROI or immediate feedback. Because if you're actually having this exponential effect, it's slow to show and all of a sudden it erupts. Your effect suddenly becomes obvious. And you have a platform, basically, of people, an ecosystem of people who are like-minded. And I feel like already I'm talking to an ecosystem of like-minded people because you've all come together with this whole collab around Detroit and helping people, which is cool. What you have that's essentially different is in change, like we are experiencing, you cannot control, you have to have trust, right? So you have to trust your people, trust your purpose, and work with people that you trust. See, it's all actually great, and it looks something like this. It's kind of happy. So basically, you're going to be united by purpose, and you constantly look for adjacent opportunity with those people that are working with you, with those organizations that are heading towards the same goal. So it's actually a more fulfilling way to work. And it has, in its essence, what we're seeing become more and more important in COVID. You have trust. You have transparent operations because you've set a common purpose that is clear. And you have resilience because you have a movement of people, a movement of organizations that also want what you want. And so how do we all work together and constantly look to each other and develop opportunities and strategies that have way more impact because we're working together instead of singularly? So I've developed adventurous thinking as this mindset to help you operate in that kind of different way, to be comfortable with not having control and to be able to set that vision and to be able to work looking for adjacent opportunity. It's kind of exhausting, but it's actually really exhilarating once you feel it. And we're going to try and exercise where you do feel it. So I have 5 lenses. We're not going to run through any of them except parkour in this session, but totally happy to talk to anyone later about it. But these lenses are designed to throw you out of your expertise and knowledge. So it's designed around the theory of multiple intelligences. And the idea is your expertise is based on knowledge. In a fast changing atmosphere that we're in right now, your knowledge cannot keep up. And so we need to go to a different part of our brain, which is possibility and vision, right? I'm going to show you how to do it. But this is the essential mindset you need. And I know that in this series, you've already tapped some of these essential characteristics. So you're ahead of the game, which is cool. But this quote by Deepak I love, which is, essentially what we're about is being ahead of change, of being the change makers, of understanding this massive wave of relentless change isn't going to change itself. It's just going to keep coming, and you want to be in front of it, and you want to be steering it, riding it and steering it, right? And for that, you need mental and physical strength, and you need creative thinking ability and a growth mindset. So essentially, here are some of the characteristics for that mindset. Embracing failure. You've done a whole session on this, but it's that idea that you don't keep failing at the same thing. That's not embracing failure, that's failing. What you're doing here is trying new things and understanding growth only will come from disruptive innovation. Incremental innovation is no longer relevant. It's too slow for the pace of change. So you need to try more radical strategies, and we're about to do one with an exercise. And you need to understand healthily that a bunch of those may not work, but you will learn so much about what you're trying to do by attempting them. So the learning and the debrief is key. Acting with purpose is essential because you're setting that at the absolute top. Like, this is not strategy, this is not outcomes, it's above that. What is your purpose? So if you look at, I've just been doing a lot of strategy work with IKEA and their parent company on how to better help the many people. Right? And everything they do, every single project, every strategy they look at, they say, is that working towards a better everyday life for the many people? If it ticks those boxes for their massive transformational purpose, they'll keep on going. So this is like your North Star that you set. And this is not necessarily your mission statement. It's above that. Mission statement's what you're going to do. This is, what legacy are you going to leave? Right. So we can always work on this on the debrief. I do a lot of stuff with not-for-profits on helping hone that. But it's a really interesting thing to work on with your group because people have different ideas and it usually disintegrates into strategy. And it's not strategy. It's not outcomes. It's bigger than that. It's purpose. All right. Trust beats control is a given. You can't control what you can't control, right? You don't have knowledge. It's changing at a great pace. It's out of your hands because so much is digitized. I'm going to show you what that means in a second. So you have to have trust. You need to look around you and go, are my systems transparent enough that we all understand and trust that everybody is working towards the same goal? And the key part of creative thinking, specifically adventurous thinking, and you're about to try this, is you must give every idea 5 minutes. So what'll happen is I'm about to give you an exercise in parkour. You will inevitably, when I say do this, you'll go, no, impossible. You will, because it happens every time. And you need to understand that is your expert brain saying, I've never heard of that answer, therefore it's impossible. Once you understand that, you go, well, I'm not going to work with that bit right now. I'm going to work in the other part of my brain, which is about moonshot, big possibility, Einstein thinking. All you have to do is understand that that is where you need to work. And then you spend 5 minutes with every bit of your intelligence, your brain, your imagination, forcing yourself to push on an idea that you and perhaps other people have told you is impossible. Nothing is impossible. Muhammad Ali, my favorite quote. Nothing is impossible. It's simply your knowledge that is preventing you from seeing a vision that could be made possible. Right? So this is a real key. And what we end up then when we have this mindset is we end up in a state of bearable mental discomfort. So check out this chair. If you're engaged and you're leaning forward, this chair will work perfectly well. However, if you lean back and relax for a nanosecond, you'll collapse, right? So the idea of bearable discomfort is it's difficult, but it's exhilarating. It keeps you on edge because you don't know. But because you have a growth mindset, you're constantly learning. Much as you do from failure, you're constantly learning from thinking in this other part of your brain. And also what you're doing is your expertise is about neural pathways that you default to every time you solve a problem. You are an expert because your neural pathways have certain routes that work for what you do. And that is great. But we're in an era where everything is changing too fast for what you've always done to stay relevant. And what we do when we do creative thinking, possibility thinking, is we think way out here. We think in terms of massive, great, huge ideas. And then we bring them back and make unexpected connections with our expertise. We forge new neural pathways. We give ourselves new ways of solving problems. That's why it's hard. That's why it hurts, but that's why it's so cool. So we can all do this. The human brain is an amazing thing. So work with me for a second. I want you to think of an elephant. Right now, when you think of an elephant, what do you think of? Maybe you think big, gray, smart, don't eat it, don't kill it, don't cut its tusks off, maybe. Okay, what we tend to do when I say think of an elephant is you normally think of everything you know about elephants, right? This is the human brain and we default to what we know. I do it too, we all do it. But what we're going to train ourselves to do is think of the possibility of elephant. We start asking questions. What would an elephant be if it was a machine? What would an elephant be if it was like 1/10 its size, but had all the same characteristics? If I had an elephant working with me in my current business, what would I be able to do? How would my abilities and impact change? Right? So what we do is we start asking questions. We provoke our curiosity, which is generally squashed by the ability to Google everything, right? We understand that when we Google, we're getting a curated algorithm that shows us stuff we already know, stuff we already like, stuff that's been paid for to be in front of us. But when we ask our own questions of ourselves and our imagination, we're getting first-hand response. So creative thinking, adventurous thinking is about what is the possibility of elephant? And that's how you need to approach everything that you do. Even if it's just for a portion of your day. What's the possibility of this? Where could it actually go? I don't need to know the answer. I just want to ask the questions. Right. So I want to talk specifically about how COVID-19 forced us to digitize across every industry, from education to healthcare to restaurant service. What it did was force everything online. It forced everything to be remote. And for some businesses and for some people, that was really successful. But for others, it left thousands of people feeling powerless, thousands of people feeling left behind. And how do we deal with that? And this fantastic quote from this guy at MIT, I should say professor, not guy, right, whatever, is so important because he talks about digital transformation, right? What you want is the caterpillar to the butterfly. But what most people get is incremental improvement. It's a faster caterpillar. And in unrelenting change, a faster caterpillar is not going to get you very far. So what I want to do briefly with you, and again, we can revisit this in the debrief, is think about how digitization has affected your organization and you and your stakeholders and your people. So digitization, just in case the word is like a bit dodgy, digitization is when you take physical products and services and you make them digital. And what happens when you do that is that you're then able to share online. It means suddenly language is not a barrier. Countries, globalization, like nationality is not a barrier. But what also happens when you share it online is you lose control. So whatever it is that you've uploaded that has value gets shared out. It becomes more democratic. It's usually free or almost free. And so that is disruptive. You're able to change human behavior at scale for good and for bad, because this thing is spreading faster and faster around the world. So, here are just some classic examples of maps and wallets and CDs and things that we already have on our phone that are fully digitized and usually free. So that's what digitization means. But the thing is, when we were forced to suddenly go online with COVID-19, different people were ready and not ready. I mean, for instance, if you didn't have Wi-Fi at home, how were you ever going to be part of this online economy? How were you ever going to learn or access health services if you didn't have reliable Wi-Fi? If you didn't have a computer for everybody in your family, how were you all going to share when kids were trying to educate while adults were trying to work? And then if you were in the restaurant or service industries, did digitization even work? So what COVID has really shown us is, yes, some stuff is more efficient, more productive, more impactful when it's digital. But some stuff is not, or some people are not equipped to harness that benefit, right? And then we saw how important a revaluation of human connection, physical connection. There are some things that simply cannot be done online with the same effect and human heart and involvement as they can be done in person. And I believe right now in COVID-19, we're seeing a huge revaluation of those services and those touch points where we do in fact need person to person, from our frontline service workers, our frontline responders, our health workers, but then a bunch of other things, because what we're seeing now is this polarization of society because you can't see a smile, and this wariness of strangers, this sudden ability to dehumanize a person because you don't know them and do horrific things to them or say horrific things to them, because suddenly we don't have the chemicals released that we have when a stranger smiles at us. So what we're seeing right now, and I think for those of us, the futurists who have been looking at the fourth revolution and how it will be ruled by digital transformation, it's a real check. You know, everything we do is supposed to be about benefiting humans, and it's actually not. So how do we look at what's happened in COVID-19, and how do we identify the people that feel powerless, the people that are afraid, and perhaps then turning into kind of this isolated, angry, and exclusive bunch, right? How can we outreach and lift those people with optimism and hope? Right. So I understand that a huge part of what you guys do is that every day. And you must have right now, I mean, I think of just the people I'm in contact with, so many of them scared, anxious, powerless. So how do we now come up with a hybrid system that allows human contact and human connection, but also understands the power and impact of digitization? Kind of interesting. Right, so I've just put a little ditty here on just a thinking point that I would love to discuss in the debrief with you all. And it's something that I'm doing a lot with for-profit companies as well as not-for-profit. And that is, how has COVID-19 changed our human connection? And what are we going to do to create these hybrid systems that moves the game forward? You know, it takes all the benefits and the understandings, the analysis and artificial intelligence and data that comes from digitization. How do we apply it to have greater impact? And then how do we revalue and focus on the touch points that really do need human to human connection, and not let those get swept up in this rush to digitize? I mean, teaching is a fantastic example. I wrote a Future of Education report late last year for Singularity. And in it, we saw time and time again research showing that an entirely online experience leaves kids behind. They have to have the contact of a teacher to help them understand and help them ask questions. Just looking at a screen all day is not going to do the same thing as provoking curiosity and provoking your thinking into that area of possibility. So if we want all those kids to have hope along with knowledge and learning, right, we actually need a person there to ask them the questions and push them to think harder and push their curiosity further. Machines just don't do that. So I think this, on the worksheet that I've shared with you, it's got a whole section on like, how will you connect? But what I wanted to do with you was two things at once. I wanted to address how you connect, but I want to address it through the parkour lens, which is the most disruptive lens I have in my adventurous thinking quiver of lenses. So what this will do will immediately throw you into not knowing. It will throw you outside your expertise in just a couple of minutes, and you'll feel the difference of having to think in this other area. So if you work with me, hopefully you've got a little pen handy, or you can just, you know, I always sit here with my Post-its and my Sharpie because, you know, you never know when something will hit. So I want to run you through a really quick version of parkour, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I need you to try this because this is exciting. It's not only great to help you understand the potential of the other part of your brain, but more and more, because right now we're in a period of time where we need to think of new systems, right? Radically rethink our systems. This is a tool that totally rethinks your system. You have the same outcome, but a radically different way of achieving it. So without further ado, we're going to parkour. Now I'm hoping, normally I show a video, but you know what I've realized is when people have different streaming, this is again the limits of digitization, the video stops and starts. So I'm going to describe parkour for anyone that doesn't know it. And I'm going to send 2 videos to Shanae to distribute if anyone still doesn't understand. There is a brilliant one from the American The Office series showing absolute failure parkour. And there are fantastic ones at the start of basically every James Bond movie showing incredibly good parkour. But essentially, parkour is physical movement, and it's moving forward with absolute confidence. You cannot practice it. It is a huge leap of faith and guts, and it often ends in failure. But it's, so as a thinking process, it's radically forward disruptive thinking. It's moving, it's thinking in a way that has never been done before, in a way that will throw you and hurl you forward into the unknown. Right, so we're going to try it. Luckily, we're just trying the thinking and not the thing. Although I've had several customers actually ask me to do some parkour for them, and I'm thinking about how I can do it without actually killing myself. So we'll come up with that. I'll share it with you if it happens. Something about a green screen, I think. All right, so here is the tool. It's parkour inversion, and we basically list out, what do you want to do? Now, you need to be pretty specific, and I'm going to give you an example so that you understand what I'm doing here. And then how do we normally do it? So say I'm saying, what do I want to do? I want to sell a house. How do I normally do it? I engage an agent. I clean the place up. I let everybody know I'm selling it. I set a price, for instance, right? Okay, so I still want to sell my house. This aim does not change. But I'm going to take all those best practice normals and I'm going to invert them. So I don't get an agent. I don't clean it up. I don't tell anybody that it's for sale, and I don't set a price. Right? And you might go, wow, how are you going to sell the house? Right? This is it, right? So this throws you into the unknown. And then you go, well, how am I going to do that? I don't know. But you can't just say, I don't know. We're in a time of change. You need to come up with a system. So now you've got to really start thinking. What does that mean? Does that mean that I'm going to Airbnb my house, and instead of people paying me money, they've got to tell 10 people that my house is for sale? Does that mean I'm going to sell lottery tickets and I'm going to lottery my house off, and I hope that I sell enough to pay for the whatever? Am I going to put it on Facebook as a competition? You know, what am I going to do? I don't know. But I'm still going to sell my house. And I'm not going to do it with any of the systems that currently exist. I'm going to come up with a new one. And it may be an epic fail, but it may be the next new breakthrough of how to sell a house. So a really fantastic example of disrupting normal and disrupting best practices is Red Bull, when Red Bull came on the soda scene. Whenever, 90s? Okay, so I'm an 80s girl, obviously, old. So in my day, there was Coke and there was Pepsi. And it was all about great taste, cheap, big can, and lots of beautiful people selling it, right? So this was the standard way, the golden standard of how to sell soda was big can, great taste, all about the taste test, cheap price, beautiful people selling it. Along comes Red Bull. The CEO says, we're not doing market research. We don't care, right? We're going to reinvent the game. Tiny can, premium price, tastes like medicine, weird, and gives you wings. Like, what's that about? Of course it doesn't give you wings. But what he said was, we don't even care if people don't drink it. We're going to sponsor extreme events. We're going to put it out there as an energy drink. Completely transformed the market by inverting everything that everyone else had done. And this is what I would like you to try. So I would challenge you to try this. And let's just give it a go for like 3 minutes, because I know 5 minutes on a Zoom call is like an eternity. I want you to think about, with what you're doing, how are you connecting with your people right now? You define your people however you want, right? But how are you currently reaching out? How do you think you're best connecting, your best work right now? And be as specific as possible, because you'll see when you go to invert, the more specific you are with the ways that you're doing it. Like you might say, we have a newsletter, but it would be better to say, I write a newsletter that I push to these people. Because the inversion of that would then be, I don't write the newsletter, I don't write the newsletter, or I don't push a newsletter to these people. Perhaps the inversion is, these people push a newsletter to me. You see, so the more specific you are in the way you currently do things, the easier it is to come up with inversion. So I'm going to give you a second. How are you connecting with your people right now? Write yourself 3 ways you think you're kind of nailing it, right? It's the best you can come up with. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, because then we can discuss the outcomes. And again, we can push this again on the debrief if you come back on Thursday. Happy to work through a few of them with you because it's often hard to do the inversion. Right, so now once you've done that, once you've written down the 3 ways that you're currently outreaching, I want you to look at the inversions. Now, don't wimp out. What will always happen if you have an MBA student? I don't know if any of you are MBA people, I see you. This is going to happen. Don't let it happen. This is what happens. An MBA student does the first inversion and goes, oh, I totally know what the answer is. Based on this inversion, it's this. And I would say to you, if you know the answer, then it clearly isn't disruptive because it already exists. What you want to do, what you want to feel is invert all 3 before you start looking for the new system. Invert all 3 and look at it and feel yourself go, I've got no idea. This is a good start. This means your expert brain is out of the way. You've put it in a corner. And now you can start the big thinking that comes with disruptive systems. Right? So you have to think big because in my experience, there has never been a massive solution that was not achievable. You know, we have at our fingertips, thanks to digitization, incredible ways to test things quickly, incredible ways to put stuff up online and test with an audience and do all sorts of stuff at little to no cost. So most ways we can come up with are totally possible, just nobody's tried it yet. So how are we going? Give me a wave if you think you've got your inversion sorted. Has anyone come up with an amazing thing that they'd never thought of before that's like a glom of the 3 inversions? So exciting. All right, now we can push on this later. Now, my other philosophy on adventurous thinking, and you might apply this, I don't know how many of you do brainstorms and group brainstorms, but I would put it to you. When is the best time to leave a really good party? Okay, in my opinion, the best time to leave a really good party is in the middle of a really good song that you super love and you go, I love this song. Yeah, woo. And then you leave the party, you sort of rock out, boom, 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 and you leave, right? You don't stay till the lights come on and everyone looks a bit miserable and there's a bit of vomit in the corner, or maybe not. Like I'm dealing with teenagers right now. So I'm just saying the party is this, right? You don't stay and clean up after the party, even if it's yours. No, do it in the morning. Right? You want to leave at the peak. You want to leave when everyone's like, yes, yes. Say so too with a brainstorm. If you're leading a group, do not brainstorm for half an hour. The worst thing you can do is go, oh, like, has anyone else got any ideas? And you, around the room, everyone goes, I mean, no, I don't. You just killed it. Right? You want to stop things when people are still thriving and buzzing and thinking, because then they understand idea sharing, idea generation. The more you have, the more you do, right? You want to have people feeling like they are a font of ideas and imagination. And you will find that if they're idea sharing, they'll be prolific. But if you go around the room and go, you know, half an hour later, can anyone think of anything? The slower thinkers, the people who are introverted, who are using memory and meaning to process their thinking, need more time. And the extroverts who are running on dopamine just gave you their best ideas 10 minutes ago. So the longest you would ever want to brainstorm will be 10 minutes. A couple of 10-minute sessions spaced apart. And the reason our debrief is a day after this, a full day after, is to allow those people who have introverted thinking, which is incredibly valuable, goes through a different part of the brain, runs on totally different chemicals. They will come up with their best stuff tomorrow. And I'm hoping they'll bring it to me on Thursday. So brainstorming session or something like this, don't stick with it. Let it go. Think about it later in your own time. If you're an introvert, think about it tonight and you'll come up with your best stuff. So this is parkour inversion. Now, this is a great team building thing. If you've been stuck on a strategy or an operation or a thing you're delivering that has kind of gone stale, let your team parkour it for 15 minutes and it will totally bring everybody back because it's kind of subversive. When you invert best practice, it feels sort of naughty. It feels fresh, it's new, and it gives you, at worst, much greater understanding and meaning around what it is you're trying to do. Because you're, again, going to be asking questions and brainstorming in areas where you have no knowledge. It's the opposite of what everybody does. Okay, I hope that sticks. I'm moving on. Right, to the last bit, which is about epic resilience. It's about a balance that starts with you. So I was describing it to a bunch of people, and one person who always comes up with the good stuff for me said, well, basically, it's essentially like on the airplane. You have to put on your own mask before you help others. And in my history of helping other people, I have not put my own mask on first. So when I developed this strategy after a massive breakdown a couple of years ago, and before that, a lot of research into this stuff, I realized that actually, if you stop, I mean, all of you right now are probably outreaching and working beyond your normal limits to be trying to help and impact as many people as possible. And that is exhausting. And if you add to that the idea that you're constantly thinking in this new way, dealing with change and coming up with strategies that don't have control involved, it will quickly wear you down. So epic resilience is a system I developed as the foundation for my adventurous thinking stuff. So when I teach adventurous thinking to companies or at Stanford, I'm now saying, like, if you want to consistently think in the realm of not knowing, you need to have epic resilience in order to not wear yourself out. And what it is it's emotional, physical, intellectual, and creative resilience. And what's interesting about this strategy is it begins with you. It applies to families. So once you start with you, we have a ripple effect, because this is actually a really great inclusive business culture strategy. And so I'm dealing with businesses and organizations who need to really rethink their culture to make sure that everybody feels powerful and included and contributing. Because if you want growth, and this is what's really interesting right now, if a company that's for profit or anywhere wants growth, you need every single person in your organization to feel empowered to innovate. Growth won't come from just leadership. It won't come from a few people having some great ideas. It actually needs to be happening at every level, because right now we're in such an upheaval, such a disrupted world, that every single way of doing is about to change. And we're seeing that with COVID. So this is in a nutshell. My book will be out next month. I'll share it with you guys. But this is in a nutshell what the balances are. So if we look at emotional, it's about boundaries and values. And then it's about connection. So set yourself up so that people understand your expectations, and then outreach. And it's about building that outreach systematically, not just doing it when you feel like it, but connecting with ultimately 3 people a day and reconnecting and reaching out, not because you need something from them, but because human connection is the most dynamic and invigorating thing for them and for you. Physical is not just about fitness, it's specifically about strength. And particularly, I find in the people that I've trained so far, I box. I love it. Who knew? I tried to adopt anyway, long story. Tried to foster a teenager with addiction that didn't work out, but he wanted to be a boxer and I hated boxing. So I decided to learn about boxing. And what I found was understanding your own physical power gives you emotional power. Hitting the heavy bag gives you emotional power. And as a woman, especially if you're aging, then you want to get that bone density and stuff, then honestly, it's about physical strength. It's not about how far you can run. It's about understanding your strength and your body's potential. It's about good nutrition and understanding how that feeds curiosity and neurology. And then it's about sleep, right? If we go to intellectual, it's essentially about maintaining a growth mindset and piquing your curiosity. So you can force yourself to be more curious. If you make yourself do a little bit of random learning every day, learning that is nothing to do with your area of expertise. And what you quickly find is that you start making unexpected connections. Everything you read that's random, your brain links it back to what you do. And you may just by accident come up with some really cool things that move your game forward by random learning and curiosity. And then finally, the creative thinking, which is adventurous thinking. It's about forcing those unexpected neurological connections, forcing idea connections, and just as importantly, it's about sharing ideas. America in particular, like some societies are really great at sharing ideas. I find Latin America very big on sharing ideas. Australia, not so much. America, not. Perhaps more so in your sector, Silicon Valley, not big sharers. However, what you realize is, and as an inventor, I know this really well, if you hang on to your idea for too long, someone else will come up with it. And if you share your idea and you actively bounce back and forth with a series of people, not only will you come up with more and better ideas, but so will they. And what better thing to be talking to people and connecting with people over than ideas and concepts and imaginative stuff, right? Let's pull it out of the gutter and stop talking about people and the hateful stuff they're doing and bring it up to transformational ideas, stuff that really moves the game forward and has impact. So EPIC is about developing these quadrants, understanding your current strengths and balancing them. And if you think about an organization, the only thing that changes, if you set up systems that clearly communicate the values of the company, trust, transparency, that foster connection through every part of the company so everyone feels heard, everyone feels empowered to be a part of the solution. If you foster constant random learning and you encourage curiosity, you encourage an amount of failure, and you very specifically say 10% of the time, I want you to try stuff that you've never tried. We understand. In fact, we want to see that when we come back to your job review. What did you try that didn't work? And what did you learn? And how do you share that with us? The creative side is like, again, giving people space and the tools to think creatively and a voice to be heard so that when they come up with something new, the whole company benefits, and idea sharing. And the only thing that changes between this individual approach and a corporate or organizational approach is that the physical is more about clean operations and transparency. It's the equivalent of you having the cleanest body you can. Is an organization being clean in their operations, having their values at the forefront and sticking to it, being ethically sound. And in including everybody, you have transparency. In being transparent, you generally include everybody. So this is, in a nutshell, I'm checking on the time here. This is a nutshell, the kind of thinking you need to make sure that people do not feel powerless, right? And if we back up one, to make sure that you are in the best place possible to do the kind of thinking that's required to move the game forward and to not wear yourself out while you're helping other people. So if we have a look at, the classic human motivations, right? Competency, authenticity, and connection. It's what every human needs to feel relevant and to feel like the game is moving for them. That's our kind of tick box. We add to that what we've learned in COVID and what we understand is necessary in times of exponential change. We need trust, we need transparency, we need resilience. And the type of thinking that can help you thrive in this environment and helps everybody understand their potential in times of change, their human potential to think their way out of all sorts of stuff and to remain relevant and valuable, is creative thinking. We need to help people understand that this other type of thinking will free them up for different jobs. It will free them up for more opportunity, and idea sharing at the crux of that. Right, so here's my final slide. Thank you for sticking with me. If you've got any questions, I think I've got like 5 minutes, and I do have that debrief same time on Thursday. I would love to run through what you get out of this. If you have a look at the worksheet, it kind of runs through the various areas of how have you digitized in your environment, who might be feeling powerless, and how can we work out an outreach for that. So I'm around. I love to brainstorm, short and sharp. And very keen to also hear whether your parkour came up with some new and interesting system opportunities to kind of build these hybrid communication systems. There are my details. You can reach out to me if you like. I forgot to put them on the worksheet, but Shanae and the guys have them. So any questions? I'm going to go off. I'm going to stop share. There we go. Boom. Oh, what happened there? I stopped share. All right. Here we are. Let's have a look. Oh, thank you. Okay. So any questions, or should we just do it all on Thursday? We've got like 5 minutes, and I know it's really nice to have 5 minutes off before your next Zoom call. Got to be honest. I don't have a next Zoom call, but What do you think, Shanae?
Yeah, if no one has any questions, feel free. We can definitely invite you all. The link is already in there for the next session. So please come back on Thursday. But I guess if YNPN would like to close us out, thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah, so thank you all for coming. I'll just reiterate that. I'm Chelsea Holmes. I'm co-chair of YNPN, so Young Nonprofit Professionals Network of Detroit. So we, as Charnay said, partnered together on this series with COACT. So thankful for Sally and her time, just all the energy, all of the ideas. Luckily I haven't had lunch yet, so I kind of debrief and decompress and just thinking about all the ideas. But we really wanted to give you just some helpful ideas, some strategy, everything that Sally walked through just as we're living in this just really quite disruptive time for so many ways and for so many reasons. Charnay will follow up with, COACT will follow up with an email that has, the worksheet that Sally mentioned a few different times. So again, if you are going to join us on Thursday for the debrief session, just, if you can work through the worksheet, and again, right now, today, tomorrow, those of us that are introverted need more time to think, or extroverted and have already ideas. Again, if you join on Thursday, please come with, kind of having looked at the worksheet ahead of time. We also will have a survey to fill. I think we're dropping it in the chat box right now if you want to click on that link, but that will also be in the follow-up email. So if you want to, take some time too, today, tomorrow, to please give us some feedback there. We're always looking for ways to improve, as well as ideas for workshop sessions. So like Sally said, we're giving you about 5 minutes back in your day. So if you need to run to the restroom, get a quick bite, or hopefully don't have another meeting at 1 o'clock. But Sally, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being willing to have our a follow-up workshop, kind of debrief session. Again, it's something new that we're trying, with this innovative thinking and different approaches to ways that we're looking at the way that we do work and the way that we function in the space we have. So with that, I will close everyone out and see those of you on Thursday, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.